Hannah was 28 years old and she had built her life the way people build things when they have started from very little. Carefully, brick by brick, with the specific patience of someone who knows that nothing is guaranteed and everything must be earned. She had grown up in a small apartment on the edge of Incheon with her grandmother, her Halmiani, who had raised her after her parents died in a road accident when Hannah was 6. Her Halmiani had worked at a dry cleaning shop for 30 years. She had small hands and a back that had curved from decades of bending over work, and she had said to Hannah, every single night before bed, the same thing. Hannah, you are the most precious thing I have ever been trusted with. Do not waste the trust. Hannah had not wasted it. She studied. She worked. She got into Yonsei University on a scholarship that she had applied for 6 times before it came through. She studied business administration and worked 3 part-time jobs simultaneously and graduated in the top 5% of her class. She got a job at Seongjin Group, one of the large conglomerates, the kind of company that occupied an entire building in Gangnam, and whose name appeared in the financial news every week. She started in the marketing department, entry-level, carrying documents and making coffee and being, by the assessment of every senior person she worked with, excellent. She was promoted twice in 3 years. She was precise. She was thorough. She had the specific gift of making complicated things clear, of taking a room full of conflicting information and finding the thread that ran through all of it, the thing that made sense of the rest. She was also, to the people who worked alongside her, the person who remembered birthdays and brought the right snack when someone was having a hard day and stayed late to help with other people's presentations without being asked and without expecting credit. She loved well. Everything she touched she loved well. And then she met Jaewon Kong. Kong Jaewon was the second son of the Kong family. Not the heir, not the chosen one, but the second son, which in families like his meant he had grown up in a specific kind of shadow. Old money. Old name. A family that had been significant for 3 generations and intended to remain so. He was 31, tall. The kind of handsome that photographs excellently and presents perfectly in rooms where presentation matters. He had a quality that Hannah, the first time she met him, would describe to her best friend Myri as warmth. The sense of being genuinely seen when he looked at you, of being the most important person in the room for the duration of his attention. She would learn much later what that quality actually was. It was skill. The warmth was real in its way. He was not cold, not cruel, not performing something entirely false. But it was the warmth of a man who had learned very early that being charming was useful, and who had deployed it so consistently for so long that the skill and the feeling had become impossible to distinguish even to himself. She did not know this the first time he looked at her. She only felt the warmth. She was 25. She had never been in love before. Not properly. Not the whole of herself, nothing held back kind that was the only kind she was capable of. She fell. Completely. Immediately. The way people fall when they have been waiting their whole life to find something worth the falling. He courted her with the specific focus of a man who has decided he wants something. He found her in the building lobby and remembered her coffee order by the 3rd time. He appeared in the hallway when she was working late and brought food without making it a thing. He texted at exactly the right frequency, often enough to be present, infrequent enough to never feel like pressure. He asked after 2 months if she would like to have dinner. He said yes. She said yes in the bathroom of the office with Myri on the phone, and Myri screamed loud enough that Hannah had to hold the phone away from her ear. Kong Jaewon, Myri said. The Kong Jaewon. The second son. He's just a person, Hannah said. He's just. Hannah. His family has a building named after them. He's just a person, Hannah said again, but she was smiling and Myri could hear the smile, and Myri said, oh no. You already like him. You really already like him. I don't. You do. I can hear it. You have the voice. What voice? The voice you get when you've already decided something is worth everything. The voice I've been dreading since we were 19. She was quiet. Myri. Just be careful, Myri said. Please, Hannah. Just be careful. He was not careful. She was herself. Which for Hannah Sia was the same thing as not being careful at all. They dated for 2 years. 2 years of the kind of relationship that looks from the outside like the answer to a question everyone has been asking. They were seen at the right restaurants, at cultural events, at the company's charity gala where Hannah wore a dress she had saved 3 months for, and Jaiwan had looked at her across the room and come directly to her side and said quietly for her alone, "You are the most beautiful person here." She had believed him. She had believed him completely. She had believed him through the moments that should have been questions. The evenings he cancelled at the last minute, the trips he took that he described only vaguely, the way his phone was always face down on tables, which she had noticed and told herself was simply his preference. She was good at managing things into the periphery. She had learned it from years of choosing to hope. His family knew about her. They had met her once briefly at a gathering that had been presented to her as casual and which she had understood in retrospect had been an assessment. His mother had looked at her with the specific expression of a woman doing arithmetic. His father had been polite in the way of men who are being polite as a courtesy, not as a warmth. She had told Myri afterward, "They were perfectly nice." Myri had said, "Hannah, they were perfectly nice to a girl they expect will eventually go away. That's not. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm telling you what I saw." She had not wanted to hear it. She had filed it in the periphery. And then, on a Thursday evening in September, she came home from work to find Jaiwan sitting in her small living room. The living room she had decorated with such care, the plants she tended, the photographs on the shelf, the grandmother's embroidery framed on the wall, with an expression on his face that she had never seen before. Not the warmth. Something underneath the warmth. Something she recognized with the specific stomach-dropping recognition of things that have been known for a long time finally arriving as guilt. "Hannah," he said. And she knew. Before he said another word, she knew. She sat down because her legs made the decision without consulting her. "Tell me," she said. He told her. The Kong family had arranged a marriage. Not to her. It had been arranged, quietly over months in the way these things were arranged in families like his, with the daughter of the O family. A business alliance. The joining of two conglomerate legacies. The kind of marriage that had nothing to do with feeling and everything to do with continuation. Jaiwan had known. He had known for 5 months. He had continued their relationship for 5 months while knowing. He had told himself, and he said this to her, sitting in her small living room with the grandmother's embroidery on the wall, and she would think about those words for a long time afterward. He had told himself that he was trying to find a way. That he was going to tell his family. That he was going to fight for her. He had not told his family. He had not fought. He had for 5 months had dinner with her and texted at the right frequency and said, "You are the most beautiful person here," and done all of it while knowing. She sat on her small sofa in her small apartment and she listened to all of it and she felt the floor go. Not dramatically. Not in the way of stories where things break and shatter. In the slower, more complete way. The way a floor goes when it reveals itself to have never been floor at all. To have been something else this entire time and you simply didn't know. "Why?" she said when he stopped talking. "Why are you telling me now?" "Because the announcement." He stopped. "When is the announcement?" "Next month." "So you are telling me now because next month it will be public and you could not have me find out from a newspaper." He didn't answer. Which was the answer? She looked at him. The man she had loved for 2 years with the whole of herself, nothing held back. The man for whom she had rearranged her life in the small ways that love rearranges lives. The schedule she had built around his, the future she had quietly begun to imagine, the moment she had thought, lying awake 6 months ago, that she might be the kind of person who would spend her life with this person. He had thought that, while he was already knowing. "You should go," she said. "Hannah. Please." Her voice was entirely level. She had always been able to do this. Maintain the surface even when the underneath was gone. It was the thing she was best at and the thing that would cost her the most. Please go. He went. She sat in the apartment for 3 hours without moving. Then she called Myri. Myri came. She sat beside Hannah on the small sofa and she did not say "I told you." She did not say anything. She simply arrived and sat and was there, which was the only right thing. At 2 in the morning, Hannah said, "I should cry." "You will," Myri said. "Later. When it's real. It's real now. It will be more real later. That's the thing about this kind of hurt. It gets more real in layers." He was right. It did. The first layer came the next morning. She woke up and for 2 seconds, the specific 2 seconds before full consciousness arrives and takes everything back, she didn't remember. She was just Hannah in her apartment, morning light coming through the curtains. Then she remembered. She lay in the bed and she felt it arrive, the full weight of it, the way pain arrives when you've been keeping it at a distance and the distance collapses. He did not go to work. For the first time in 3 years she called in sick. She lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and felt the layers come. The 2 years. He went through them. Every dinner, every text, every moment she had believed in. She went through them and held each one up to the new light and watched them change color in it. Not fake exactly. That was the complicated part. Not fake, he had felt things, she knew he had felt things, that was not what had happened. What had happened was that he had felt things and had chosen, when the choice was required, something that was not her. She lay in bed and she thought, "I loved him completely. And he chose something that was not me." She thought, "This is the measure. This is the actual measure of everything." The second layer came the following week when someone at the office, a colleague who did not know, who meant nothing by it, mentioned seeing a news item about an upcoming announcement from the Kong family. A marriage. The O family. Hannah was in the office kitchen. She put down her coffee cup very carefully on the counter. She walked to the bathroom. She stood in the bathroom stall with both hands flat on the door and she breathed. The way you breathe when you are not going to fall apart in a bathroom at work. She breathed for 4 minutes. Then she washed her hands, fixed her face in the mirror and went back to her desk. No one knew. She made sure no one knew. The third layer was the worst. The third layer came a month later on the evening of the announcement. She had known it was coming. She had prepared herself. She had told herself she was ready. She was not ready. She was sitting at home, she had made herself eat dinner, a small victory, she was working on small victories, when Myri called. "Don't look at your phone," Myri said immediately. "What?" "Don't look at any news, don't go on social media, don't." "Myri, what is it?" "There are photos from the announcement dinner. They're everywhere." "Hannah, please don't." She looked. She looked because she had always been the person who looked at the thing rather than away from it. Because looking away had never been her way. She looked at the photographs. Jaewon Kong and Oh So-yeon at an announcement dinner. The Oh family. The Kong family. A room full of people who had known about this for months. Jaewon in a suit she recognized, she had been with him when he bought that suit, had waited outside the fitting room, had said yes. That one is the one. And Oh Seung, who was beautiful and composed and stood beside Jaewon with the specific ease of a woman who has known this was coming and has been prepared for it. Hannah looked at those photographs for a long time. Then she set down her phone. She did not cry. He was past crying. She had reached the place on the other side of crying that is not peace but is something colder and more permanent. The place where you understand with the clarity of someone who has been through all the layers, exactly what has happened and what it means and what you are going to have to do next. She was going to have to rebuild. Everything. Not just the relationship. The self. The self that had been organized for 2 years around someone who was not coming back. The self that had loved completely and without conditions and had received in return 5 months of someone knowing and not telling. She was going to have to find out who she was when she was not being loved by the wrong person. She did not know yet who that was. She was about to find out. She went to Incheon on a Sunday. She took the bus. She always took the bus to her Halmianis, even now that she could afford the train, because the bus was what she had always taken, and the bus smelled like her childhood. And sometimes you needed the smell of your childhood. Her Halmiani opened the door before she knocked. She was 81 years old and small enough now that Hannah had to bend to hug her. And her hands were the hands of someone who had worked for 60 years with them. And she looked at Hannah's face with the specific vision of a woman who has known someone since they were 6 years old and can read them like weather. "Come in," she said. "I made my yuk-guk." She fed her first. She always fed her first. This was Halmiani's principle. Before any conversation that mattered, you ate. You filled the body before you emptied the heart. They sat together at the small kitchen table that Hannah had sat at since she was 6 years old. And she ate the soup, and her Halmiani did not ask anything. She waited. Hannah put down her spoon. "Halmiani," she said. "I thought I knew who I was choosing. I looked and I thought I saw clearly, and I was wrong." "Yes," her Halmiani said. "How do you go back to trusting what you see when you have been that wrong?" Her Halmiani was quiet for a moment. She poured more soup into Hannah's bowl without asking. "When I was 34, she said, your grandfather left. You know this?" "Yes." "You do not know that for 2 years after I could not trust my own hands. I had trusted them to build something, and they had built something that broke. I thought, if my hands built that, what else have they built wrong? What can I trust them to do?" Hannah looked at her. "And then one day I was working at the shop and a dress came in. A wedding dress, very old, someone's grandmother's, and it had a tear right here." She touched her collarbone. "A bad tear. The woman who brought it was crying. She said no one could fix it. She said it was ruined. And you fixed it." "I worked on that dress for 12 hours. I fixed it so well that the woman could not find the tear, even knowing where it was." Her Halmiani folded her hands on the table. "Hannah, my hands were the same hands that had built what broke. The same hands. And they fixed that dress. The capability was always there. The mistake did not erase it. It only showed me that I needed to look more carefully at what I was building, not that I should stop building." Hannah sat with this. "He took 2 years, she said. "Yes. And I can't get them back." "No. You cannot." Her Halmiani looked at her steadily. "But you kept yourself, didn't you? Even in those 2 years, even loving someone who did not love you correctly, you kept working. You kept being yourself. He could take the years, but he could not take what you were doing in them." Hannah thought about the promotions, the work, the colleagues she had helped, the things she had built professionally while building. She thought something personal. "You are still you," her Halmiani said simply. "The you that made me proud since you were 6 years old. That is not gone." She drove back to Seoul that evening. She sat on the bus with her head against the window and watched the lights of the city come toward her out of the dark. And she thought about hands that build things, and mistakes that do not erase capability, and the specific distance between who you have been and who you are becoming. She was not there yet, but she was moving. She met him in the worst possible way, which is to say at work. On a day when she looked, by her own assessment, approximately like someone who had been awake since 4 in the morning and had forgotten to eat lunch, which she had been and which she had. He was consulting. An external strategic consultant brought in to assess the marketing division's 5-year plan, which was the plan Hannah had spent 6 months building, which meant that he was there to look at her work, which meant that she had to be professional and present and functional on a day when she was none of those things. His name was Lee Juno. He was 33. Quietly built. Not imposing, not performing anything, but taking up space in the specific way of people who have decided exactly how much space they require and are comfortable with it. With dark eyes and the kind of face that took a moment to arrive in your memory but, once there, refused to leave. He was introduced to the team. He shook hands. He looked at people when they spoke to them, not with the performed attention she had learned to recognize from Jaiwan, but with the specific quality of someone who is actually listening, who is organizing what they hear, who will remember it. She noticed this. She was not supposed to be noticing anything about anyone. She was, in fact, in the middle of a private commitment to not noticing anything about anyone for a significant period of time. She noticed anyway. He sat down at the conference table. He opened her plan. He read it, all of it, not skimming, reading, while the team waited. After 8 minutes he looked up. He looked at her. Who built the customer segmentation framework in Section 4? I did. She kept her voice neutral. She was braced for what came next. The notes, the revisions, the polite corrections from someone who had been brought in to find the problems. It's the strongest part of the plan, he said. The rest of the plan has some structural issues we should work through. But this, he indicated Section 4. This is the kind of thinking that happens when someone actually understands what the data is saying instead of what they want it to say. She blinked. Thank you, she said. I'm not complimenting you, he said. I'm noting an observation. We're going to use this framework as the basis for revising the rest of the plan. Which means you'll be working closely with me on this. He looked back at the document. She looked at the side of his face. She was not noticing anything. They worked together for 3 weeks. He was, she discovered, meticulous in the same way she was meticulous. Not in the same methodology but in the same fundamental orientation. The same refusal to accept the surface version of a thing when the thing itself was available. He pushed back on her ideas when he disagreed, which was regularly, and he did it with the directness of someone who assumed she could handle direct disagreement, which she found she had not expected to find anything refreshing. He did not perform warmth. He was warm occasionally in specific moments. When a junior member of the team was nervous presenting and he said something that deflated the room pressure without drawing attention to itself. When he brought coffee to a late session without making it an offering, just a fact. But he did not deploy warmth strategically. She noticed the difference. She was not supposed to be noticing. On the 12th day they were in the conference room alone at 8 in the evening, working through a revision that had been more complicated than expected, and she made a mistake. A calculation error. Small, not consequential, but there. She caught it herself immediately and corrected it. You caught that faster than I did, he said. I made it, she said. I should catch it. Most people don't catch their own mistakes that quickly. Most people are too invested in having been right to see that they're wrong. She looked at him. I spent a long time, she said, and she did not intend to say this. It arrived before she could organize it back into something professional, being invested in having been right. And it was expensive. He looked at her. He did not ask. He looked at her and then he looked back at the document and he said, That's Section 3 revision. Tell me what you think the right approach is. She told him. He listened. She talked about the revision for 12 minutes and she could feel, underneath the talking, something unclenching in her chest that she had not known was clenched. Being heard specifically. Being heard on the thing she actually thought rather than the thing she was supposed to say. That's right, he said when she finished. Let's write it that way. They worked until 10. On the way to the elevator he said, How long did you work on the original plan? 6 months. It shows. Not in a bad way. It shows in the way that things you care about always show. She looked at the elevator doors. Good night, Lee, she said. Good night, Seosai. She rode the elevator down alone and stood in the lobby of the building for a moment before she walked out into the night. She was noticing things. She was going to have to make a decision about that. You're different, Myri said. They were at their usual place. A small restaurant near Hongdae where they had been having dinner on the last Friday of every month since they were 22, a habit so established it had become a kind of anchor. When the world was uncertain there was always the last Friday. I'm the same, Hannah said. You're not. You're, Myri looked at her carefully. You're more present. Since about 3 weeks ago you've been more present. I've been busy. Hannah. The consulting project has been. Hannah. She set down her chopsticks. Myri looked at her with the expression she had been wearing since they were 19. The expression of someone who has known another person long enough to read them in a language no one else has access to. "Tell me," Myri said. "There's nothing to tell. Is it someone at work?" "No." "Is it the consultant?" He was very still. Myri pointed her chopsticks. "It's the consultant. Nothing has happened. I didn't ask if anything happened. I asked if it was him." "Myri, answer the question." She looked at the table. "I notice him," she said. "That's all. I am noticing a person and I am choosing to do nothing about it because it has been 3 months since Jaiwan and I have not even begun to. 3 months is long enough to notice someone. Not for me. You know I don't notice people quickly. And when I do notice them I go completely and I cannot afford to." "Hannah." Myri put down her chopsticks. "Can I say something that might be difficult?" "You always do. The thing that happened with Jaiwan. The reason it destroyed you the way it did." She paused. "It wasn't that you loved him too much. It's that you loved him in the wrong direction. You gave everything to someone who was looking somewhere else. And you told yourself not to see it." Hannah was quiet. "This person you're noticing," Myri said. "Is he looking somewhere else?" He thought about the conference room. The way he asked what she thought and then waited for the actual answer. The way he had not performed warmth but had been warm anyway. "No," she said. "I don't think so." "Then the question isn't whether you're ready. The question is whether you're going to let what Jaiwan did to you decide what happens next." He sat with that. "I'm afraid," she said. "I know. I don't trust what I see. I was so wrong before." "You weren't wrong about what you saw. You were wrong about what you were willing to let yourself see." Myri looked at her steadily. "Those are different mistakes." She looked at her oldest friend. "What if I'm wrong again?" "Then you deal with that when it comes." Myri picked up her chopsticks. "But Hania, you can't spend the rest of your life refusing to look because you're afraid of what you'll find. That's not being careful. That's being absent from your own life." She thought about how many hands that build things, mistakes that do not erase capability. "He's almost done with the consulting project," she said. "Yes. Another week. And then he won't be at the office anymore." Myri looked at her. "Then," Myri said very calmly, "you should probably say something before he leaves." She did not say something before he left. The last day of the consulting project arrived and he presented the final revised plan to the division head and it was excellent. She knew it. Better than the original, which had been good because the 6 weeks of revision had made it something more precise and more honest. And afterward there was the brief, slightly awkward social moment of a project ending and people being released back to their ordinary configurations. He shook hands with the team. He came to her last. "The framework," he said. "Section 4. The customer segmentation. I want you to know that that's going into my portfolio as a reference case." She was trying to be professional. She was almost achieving it. "Thank you. It was good work." He looked at her. "You're good at this. You could have led with the compliment 3 weeks ago," she said. "Instead of the structural issues. If I'd led with the compliment you'd have dismissed everything else I said." She looked at him. "That's accurate." "Yes," she admitted. He was quiet for a moment. "Siasi," he said. His voice had changed slightly. Still careful. But something in it was different. "Lisi. Would you?" He stopped. She realized, not performing anything. He was for the first time slightly uncertain. "I would like to take you to dinner. Not as a consultant. Not as, professionally. Personally." She looked at him. Her heart was doing something that she had decided she was not going to let her heart do. Her heart was not listening. "I'm not," she said. "I'm in the middle of, I'm coming out of something. And I'm not sure I'm ready to." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking you to be ready. I'm asking you to have dinner." She stood in the conference room where they had spent 3 weeks working, and she thought about what Myri had said about absence from your own life, and about how Miani's hands that built things, and about the mistake that was not seeing clearly versus the mistake of choosing not to see. Dinner, she said. Yes. One dinner. One dinner. And I need you to know that there are things I'm still. Siasi. Yes. One dinner, he said again. The rest of it can wait. She took a breath. All right, she said. One dinner. One dinner became 3. 3 became a month of the specific, careful intimacy of 2 people who are both paying attention. He found out. He had grown up in Taejun, the eldest of 2 children, with parents who ran a small restaurant. He had worked there from the time he was old enough to carry plates. He understood from the earliest age the specific relationship between hard work and outcome, not as a philosophy, as a daily fact. He had been a disappointing student in secondary school, not because he was not intelligent but because he had not yet found the thing that made intelligence feel necessary. He had found it at 19 in a business strategy course that he had taken almost by accident, that had shown him the specific pleasure of making complicated things clear. He had spent 5 years working at a consulting firm where he had been very good and mildly miserable, because the firm valued the appearance of analysis over analysis itself, and he had eventually decided that misery was not an acceptable trade for security and started his own practice. He was, by any external measure, significantly more financially precarious than the career he had left. He did not find this troubling. Money that comes from doing the wrong thing, he said, doesn't feel like money. It feels like a debt you're paying off. She had looked at him across the table when he said that. She had thought about what it meant to have spent 2 years with someone for whom money and position and the right room had been the primary orientation. She had thought, this is different. He had also found out. He had a younger sister named Jiyeon who was studying veterinary medicine and who he called every Sunday and who sent him photographs of the animals she worked with, which he kept in a folder on his phone that he showed her one evening with the specific combination of embarrassment and warmth of someone sharing something they are not sure is welcome. He read. Seriously. Not to perform intellectualism, he read the way people read when books are genuinely necessary to them, in the margins with a pencil, arguing with the pages. He made decisions slowly. When she asked his opinion and he did not immediately have one, he said, I don't know yet. And then days later, came back with a position that was so clearly and fully formed that it was obvious he had been turning it over quietly the entire time. She found out that she trusted this. That the slowness felt like seriousness rather than avoidance. She found out that when he listened to her, when she talked about work, about the ideas she was building, about the direction she was trying to move the marketing strategy, he was listening to what she actually thought and not to the version of her that confirmed what he already believed. She found out that this was, more than anything else, what had been missing. She also found out what she was afraid of. She found out this on the evening, 6 weeks in, a quiet restaurant, the kind of place you go when you are not performing the date but having it, when he said, You've been somewhere else tonight. She looked at him. Not badly, he said. Just, somewhere. You can say if you want. You don't have to. She looked at the table. She had promised herself she would not do this, would not import the last relationship into this one, would not make him carry what was not his. But he had noticed. He had noticed and said so and given her the choice. I was thinking, she said, about whether I can trust what I think I see. About whether my judgment, about people, is something I can rely on. After, she stopped. After what happened before. Yes. He was quiet. Can I ask what happened? She told him. Not the full version. Not the layers, not the 2 years of believing and the 5 months of him knowing and not telling. The shape of it. The measurement of it. He listened. When she finished he was quiet for a long time. The thing you're describing, he said carefully, isn't a failure of your judgment. I chose someone who. You chose someone who performed something convincingly. And you trusted the performance. Because you're the kind of person who trusts. He held her gaze. That's not poor judgment. That's being honest about the world. The failure was his. The performance, the knowing and not telling. Not yours. But I should have seen. What? What were you supposed to see that he wasn't showing you? He leaned forward slightly. Hanasi. I've spent 6 weeks watching you work. You see everything. You see what's in the data before anyone else sees it. You see the person in the corner of the room who's struggling before they've said a word. You are not someone who misses things. He paused. You were with someone who worked very hard to make sure you missed the specific thing he needed you to miss. That's different. He sat with that. She had been carrying the weight of the missing for months. The thing she should have seen, the failure she had assigned to herself. She had been carrying it with the specific thoroughness of someone who believed that if she carried the weight of it she could prevent it from happening again. He had just set it down. Not taken it from her. Set it down. Put it where it belonged. You are going to be careful with me, she said. Yes. And I am going to be afraid sometimes. I know. And I need you to. She stopped. Started again. I need you to tell me things. Even the things that are hard to say. I can't do the not telling again. I will not survive another. Hanasi. She stopped. I will tell you things, he said. All of them. Even the hard ones. I am better at hard conversations than comfortable silences. You should know that about me. She looked at him. I know that about you, she said. I've known it since the first day. You noticed. I notice everything, she said. Apparently. He looked at her with the expression she was learning to read, the specific quality of his attention when he was deciding something, and he said very quietly, I notice everything about you. She felt her heart do the thing. This time she let it. She had, in the months since September, told herself that Jaiwan Kong was gone from her life. He was not gone from her professional life. She discovered this on a Monday morning in March, when the division head called a meeting to announce that Seongjin Group was beginning preliminary discussions with Kong Corporation about a potential partnership, a joint project, a co-branding initiative that would require the two companies' marketing teams to work closely together. The Kong Corporation marketing team was led by a senior director. The senior director's name was Kong Jaiwan. She sat in the meeting room and heard this information and kept her face entirely still and thought, of course. Of course. She told Juno that evening. They had been together. Officially named, the conversation had been had, for 2 months. He listened. What do you want to do? He said. I don't have a choice. If I request to be removed from the project, it draws attention and raises questions. And I'm not going to let him be the reason I step back from work that matters. Then you don't step back. But you should know. I wanted you to know before it started. He looked at her. Does he know about me? I don't know. I don't think so. He will, Juno said simply. These things come out. Yes. Are you afraid of that? He thought about it. Honestly. I'm afraid, she said, of seeing him again. Not for the reasons, not because I feel I don't. I'm afraid of what it brings back. The memory of being that specific kind of fool. You were not a fool. I know that in my head. It doesn't always reach the rest of me. He reached across the table and put his hand over hers. Then I will be where the rest of you can see me, he said. While you're working through that. She looked at his hand. She thought about what it meant to be with someone who said things like that without making them into a performance. All right, she said. All right. The first meeting with the joint team was on a Wednesday. She arrived early. She was always early. She arranged her materials and sat at the conference table and looked at her notes and breathed the way she had learned to breathe in bathroom stalls. The way you breathe when you are not going to be undone in a room that matters. He came in with the Kong Corporation team. She felt it. The specific physical sensation of a person you used to love entering your field of vision for the first time since everything changed. Not feeling. Not the love that was gone. The ghost of it. The shape of where it used to be. He looked at her. She looked at him. For 1 second, just one, she saw something move across his face. Surprise, or maybe recognition, or maybe the specific expression of someone confronted with the evidence of a choice they made. And the person most affected by it. She held his gaze for exactly 1 second. Then she looked at her notes. "Good morning," she said to the room, to everyone and no one specific. "Shall we begin?" He found her in the corridor after the first meeting. "Hanasi," he said. He was using the formal address. She noted this. "Kangsi," she said. Equally formal. "I wanted to." He stopped. He looked, she thought, uncomfortable in a way she had never seen him look before. Jaiwan Kong, in the 2 years of their relationship, had never looked uncomfortable. He had always known exactly where he was in every room. "I wanted to say that I'm sorry for how I handled things." She looked at him. She thought about what she wanted to say. He thought about the layers. The floor that wasn't there. The sitting in her apartment for 3 hours without moving. The bathroom at work where she had breathed for 4 minutes. The bus to Incheon and Halmyeoni's Mayakguk, and the story about the wedding dress. She thought about the conference room at 8 in the evening and a man who said, "I'm not complimenting you, I'm noting an observation," and the specific, strange feeling of being heard on what you actually thought. She thought about 2 months of someone who told her hard things and hard truths and did not manage her or perform for her or arrange the room so she would not see what was in it. He thought about all of it. And then she said, "Thank you for the apology. I accept it." She held his gaze. "And I want you to know something." He waited. "What you did was painful. The 5 months of knowing and not telling, that was a cruelty even if you didn't mean it as one." She kept her voice even and professional. "But I want you to know that I'm grateful." He blinked. "Grateful. Because of what happened, I learned the difference between someone who performs warmth and someone who simply is. And that difference changed everything about what I'm looking for and what I'm able to recognize." She met his eyes. "I wouldn't have known the difference without the comparison. So, thank you for that." He stood in the corridor and stared at her. She picked up her folder. "I'll see you at the Thursday meeting," she said. "I think the Section B proposal is going to need revision. I'll send notes before then." She walked away. She did not look back. She went to the elevator and pressed the button and stood watching the numbers count down and felt, in the place in her chest where the floor had been, something entirely new. Solid. Not Juno. Not his presence, not his support, though those were real and mattered. Her own floor. The one she had been building brick by brick in the months since September. With Halmyeoni's soup and Myri's last Fridays and the work she had never stopped doing, and the slow, patient, honest learning of what she needed from another person. She had built it herself. And it held. The invitation arrived at her office in April. White card. Gold lettering. Kong Jaiwan and Oh Soo-young. The date. The venue. And at the bottom in smaller text a handwritten note. "I hope you will come. I think it would mean something to both of us if you could." She sat with the invitation for a long time. Then she showed it to Juno. He read it. He set it down. "Are you going to go?" he said. "No," she said immediately. "Why not?" "Because I have nothing to prove. Going would suggest I have something to prove." "I don't." "That's the right answer," he said. "You agree. I think going to the wedding of the person who hurt you to demonstrate that you've moved on is a performance. And you're done performing." He looked at her. "Right back. Be kind. Decline clearly." "What do I say? What do you actually want to say?" He thought about it. She sat at her desk that evening and she wrote. "Tuansi, thank you for the invitation. I will not be attending, not from any remaining feeling but from a simple preference not to perform any version of closure for an audience. I wish you and Soyeon see a life that is genuinely good. Not performed good. Actually good. I think you know the difference. I think you have always known the difference, and I think that knowing has cost you more than you will admit. The best thing you ever did was teach me what I was looking for. Take care of yourself. H. S." She read it over. He sent it. She went home to where Juno was making dinner. They had reached the stage of knowing each other's kitchens, which was its own kind of landmark. And she sat at the table while he cooked and she told him what she had written. He listened. "How do you feel?" he said. "Like I put something down," she said. "Something I've been carrying." "Good." He set a bowl in front of her. "Eat." She ate. The dinner was good. The apartment, her apartment which she had built and furnished with care, each object chosen, the grandmother's embroidery on the wall, the plants she tended, was warm. The man across the table was someone she had not been looking for and had found anyway, in a conference room at 8 in the evening, by the specific grace of noticing. She was not the same person she had been in September. She was not a diminished version of that person either. She was something that had been through the layers and come out knowing the difference. She had put down the weight. Her floor held. She brought him to Incheon in May. She told him about Halmyeoni on the bus. Not everything. You couldn't give someone everything about your Halmyeoni in a bus ride. But the important things. The dry cleaning shop. The 30 years. The mayakguk. The thing she said every night before bed. "You are the most precious thing I have ever been trusted with," Juno repeated slowly. "She said that every night?" "Every night. Since I was 6. He was quiet. He stopped. "That's an enormous thing to give a child." "Yes." "She must have known it was what you needed most." Hannah looked out the bus window. "She always knows what's needed most," she said. "That's what 81 years gets you." Her Halmyeoni opened the door. She looked at Juno. Juno looked at her Halmyeoni. There was a moment, a brief, significant moment, of two people assessing each other with the full, honest attention of people who do not have time for performances. Then her Halmyeoni said in Korean, "You have his mother's hands." She was looking at Juno's hands. A working person's hands. "Good." Juno looked at Hannah. "What did she say?" "She said you have good hands." "My mother would be pleased to hear that," he said. And then to her Halmyeoni bowing, "Thank you for having me." Her Halmyeoni looked at him with the expression she used when she was doing the accounting. The long, precise, 81 years of experience accounting. Then she stepped back and said, "Come in. I made mayakguk." After they ate, after the Halmyeoni had asked Juno questions that were direct to the point of being almost startling and he had answered every one of them without deflecting and without performing, Hannah went to wash the bowls and left them alone. She could not hear what they said. When she came back, her Halmyeoni was showing him the embroidery on the wall. The grandmother's embroidery that Hannah had framed and brought with her from apartment to apartment, each move for 10 years. Juno was looking at it with the expression she recognized as his real attention. "She made this," he said. 60 years ago, her Halmyeoni said. Before her hands curved. "It's extraordinary." She was extraordinary. Her Halmyeoni looked at Hannah. "Some things are made by people who put the whole of themselves into the making. You can always tell." Hannah looked at her Halmyeoni. Her Halmyeoni looked back at her with the expression she had worn since Hannah was 6 years old. The specific look of someone who has been trusted with the most precious thing and takes that trust with full seriousness. "You look like yourself again," her Halmyeoni said. "The whole self. Not just the part you show." She could not speak for a moment. "I'm getting there," she said. "You're there," her Halmyeoni said. "You just haven't caught up with it yet." On the bus back, Juno was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "She's the reason you are the way you are." "What way?" "The way you are." He paused. "The whole heart way. The nothing held back way. The way you love things." He looked at her. "That was given to you. By her. By someone who made sure you knew every night that you were worth that kind of care." She looked at him. "And then someone treated that as ordinary," he said quietly. "Someone received what she made and didn't understand what it was worth." "Juno. I'm not saying this to..." He stopped. "I'm saying it because I want you to know that I understand what I'm holding." I know what this is worth. What you are worth. He held her gaze. I'm not going to make the mistake of treating it as ordinary. The bus moved through the dark between Incheon and Seoul. The lights came toward them. She put her head on his shoulder. He put his arm around her. They rode the whole way back like that in the dark with the lights of the city coming to meet them. A year after September. She was 30 years old. She had been promoted. The third promotion in 4 years, this one to head of marketing strategy, which meant the plan she had built and the consultant had helped her revise and which had been implemented and which had exceeded its targets by 22% was now the basis for the entire division's forward approach. Which meant her framework, the one from Section 4, was now in the company's official methodology documentation. She had also in the past year begun mentoring 3 junior members of the team, not as an assignment, as a choice. She had seen in them something she recognized. The specific combination of capability and uncertainty that she had carried herself at 25. The need for someone to say this is good and here is how to make it better without the performance of either the compliment or the criticism. He said it. She had discovered very good at it. Myri came to her 30th birthday dinner. The proper one, the friends and family one, the evening at a restaurant that meant something, and sat across from her and looked at her with the expression that lived between joy and relief. You're different, Myri said. You always say that. Because you keep being different. Myri shook her head. But this is the good kind. This is the you that I knew was in there and kept waiting for. I was always in there. I know. You just got buried for a while. She thought about buried things. Seeds. The slow, underground work of becoming. Do you know what I thought about, she said, on the worst night? The night of the announcement. When I looked at the photographs and felt, when the floor went. What? I thought, I cannot afford to be this broken. I have Halmiani who made me out of something. I have work that matters. I have people I love who love me back. I cannot let this make me smaller than what they made me. She paused. And then I thought, being broken for a while is not becoming smaller. It's the part that has to happen before the rebuilding. And were you right? He thought about it. The layers. The bus to Incheon. The framework in Section 4. The conference room at 8 in the evening. The dinner. The bus back from Incheon. The promotion. The mentoring. The woman she was right now, sitting at her own birthday dinner in the restaurant she had chosen, with the people she had chosen, 30 years old and more herself than she had been at 25. Yes, she said. I was right. Later that night after the restaurant, Juno walked her home. They stood outside her building in the May evening. Warm, the kind of Seoul evening that smells like the city finally remembering it can be gentle. 30, he said. Don't make it a thing. I'm not making it a thing. I'm noting it. There's a difference. There's always a difference. He looked at her. I want to tell you something. All right. When I took that consulting project, when I walked into that conference room, I was not expecting to find anyone. She looked at him. I had been doing the work for years and I was good at the work and the work was enough. I had told myself it was enough. He paused. And then I walked into a conference room and someone had built a framework in Section 4 that was the most honest piece of strategic analysis I had seen in 3 years of consulting. And the person who built it was sitting at the table looking like someone who had not slept properly in months and was still the sharpest mind in the room. You noticed that. I notice everything about you. He held her gaze. I noticed then and I have not stopped. And I want you to know that what I see every time I look, every time, is someone worth all of it. All the noticing. All the careful. All the time. She stood in the May evening outside her building. She thought about a girl on a bus to Incheon who did not know yet that she was going to be all right. She thought about hands that build things and mistakes that do not erase capability and the specific difference between being seen and being used. She thought about a year of learning who she was on the other side of being loved incorrectly. Juno, she said. Yes. I love you. She said it the way she did everything, Completely nothing held back. I want you to know that. Not because the evening requires it. Because it's true and it's been true and I'm done being careful with things that are true. He looked at her. And then he pulled her in. Not dramatically. Not in the performed way of someone conscious of the moment. Simply, he held her in the May evening, with the fullness of someone who has been waiting for permission to stop being careful. I love you, he said into her hair. I have been in love with you since section 4. She laughed. The real laugh. From the real place. That is, she said, the most analytical declaration of love I have ever heard. I told you I was better at hard conversations than comfortable silences. Evidently. He pressed his lips to her hair. They stood in the May evening for a long time. A year later. She was presenting at a company leadership conference. Not about marketing strategy, about leadership. About what it meant to build a team that told the truth. About the difference between a room where people said what was expected and a room where people said what was real. She had been asked to give a keynote. She was backstage 5 minutes before she went on, looking at herself in the mirror they had set up in the green room. She looked at the woman in the mirror. 31 years old. Black blazer she had chosen herself. Hair the way she wore it when she was not performing anything. She thought about a woman who had stood in a bathroom stall at work breathing in and out for 4 minutes. She thought about a woman who had ridden a bus to Incheon in the dark. She thought about a woman who had sat in an apartment for 3 hours without moving and felt the floor go. She thought about what it had taken to get from there to here. Not one decision. Not one good man appearing at the right moment. Not rescue from the outside. The work. The layers. The halmeanese soup. The Myri's last Fridays. The mentoring she had done that had changed something in her as much as in them. The framework in section 4. The promotion. The email she had written declining the wedding invitation with the best thing you ever did was teach me what I was looking for. All of it. Every piece. She had built this woman the way her halmeani had fixed the torn wedding dress. 12 hours, invisible stitching, so thorough that even knowing where the tear had been you could not find it. Not because the tear was erased. Because what had been built around it was stronger. She heard her name being announced. She took a breath. She walked out. She stood at the lectern and looked at the room, full of people she knew and people she didn't, people who were where she had been and people who were where she was going. She set aside the prepared remarks. She said, I want to talk about the difference between building something and performing something. Because I spent 2 years of my professional life and my personal life, very confused about which one I was doing. And the confusion cost me. But the lesson it taught me is the foundation of everything I'm going to tell you today. She paused. The foundation is this. You cannot build on performance. Performance is load-bearing in the way that set dressing is load-bearing. It looks right, it reads correctly from the outside, and then the weight arrives and it reveals itself for what it is. What holds weight, in a strategy, in a team, in a relationship, in a life, is what is actually true. What is honest. What does not require a performance to sustain itself. The most important thing I have learned in the last 2 years is the difference between those two things. And the second most important thing is that you only learn it by finding out the hard way. She looked at the room. If you are in the hard way right now, she said, I need you to hear this. The floor is not gone. You are building it. Brick by brick. In the dark. It takes longer than it should and it costs more than it should and nobody sees the work until the floor is there and holding weight. But it holds. It holds because you built it. And that means it was always yours. She walked out of the conference hall into the afternoon. Juno was waiting outside. He had come to see her speak, which she had told him was unnecessary, which he had treated as information rather than instruction. He was leaning against the wall, reading, which was where he always was when she needed to find him. He looked up when she came out. How was it? He said. I went off script. You always go off script. I think it was better off script. I know it was. He put his book in his bag. Your halmeani called. She wants to know if we're coming Sunday. Tell her yes. I already told her yes. She looked at him. You told her yes before asking me. You always say yes. I was saving time. She shook her head. He held out his hand. He took it. They walked out into the afternoon. The city around them loud and ordinary and entirely real, doing what cities do when the sky is clear and the season has turned and everything that was cold has decided finally to let the warmth in. She walked beside the person who had told her the truth, who had been exactly what he was every time, with no managed distance and no performed warmth and no face-down phone on a table, who had looked at Section 4 and seen her. She walked beside him and the city moved around them, and she was 31 years old and she had been through the layers and come out on the other side, and the floor held beneath her feet with every step. Her floor. Built by her. Brick by brick. In the dark. While no one was watching. There is a particular kind of woman who loves without conditions. He gets destroyed. And then she rises. Not the same. Better. Harder where she needs to be hard. Softer where she has learned that softness is not weakness but the bravest thing. More precise about what she is looking for. More honest about what she sees. More willing to trust what the evidence actually shows. The hands that build, the coffee that arrives without announcement, the man who reads in the margin, the person who waits for you to find the floor because he could see you were building it and he was not going to rush the building. Hannah Seo was destroyed. Hannah Seo rose. Not because someone rescued her. Because she is exactly the kind of woman who rises. She has always been that woman. She only needed the fire to show it. The end. To anyone watching this tonight who is in the layers, who is sitting in the apartment at 3 in the morning or breathing in a bathroom stall or riding a bus to someone who feeds you soup before they ask questions. The floor is there. You are building it right now. In the middle of everything you're going through. You are Hannah. You have always been Hannah. Subscribe, ring the bell. Leave me a comment. Where are you in this story right now? The layers. The rebuilding. The Sunday bus. Or are you on the other side holding someone's hand in the afternoon? I want to know. Until next time, trust what is actually true. Build on what holds. And know that somewhere someone is reading in the margins, waiting for you to finish building your floor.